More than 2,000 years ago, in the Warring States period when 100 schools of thought contended for supremacy, there was a thinker who put forward a different attitude towards life. He did not talk about fame, he did not fight for worldly affairs, and he did not even care about success. He said, true freedom is inner peace, not external clamor. He is Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi was a Taoist philosopher, but he was not bound to a system. He didn't want to go with the flow, and he didn't want to force himself to be a qualified man of the world. In this episode, through the two key words, Wu Wei and life, we'll approach Zhuangzi's free thinking, and see how he kept his mind clear and peaceful in the midst of chaos. Let us first understand Wu Wei in Zhuangzi's thought. This is one of the core concepts of Taoist philosophy, but to understand it, we must not just take it literally as doing nothing. In Zhuangzi's case, Wu Wei refers to a way of behavior that is not deliberate, not forced, and not against nature. It is, first of all, a response to and reflection on the Confucian idea of doing something. In the view of Confucianism, a gentleman should be ambitious, virtuous, and responsible, and should set an example to others, even taking the world as his own. It is said in the Yi, Ji Ri, a gentleman will be a man of action. Confucius also said, people can promote the way, not the way promote people. He always emphasized that man's subjective efforts could influence the world. However, in Zhuangzi's view, such doing something is sometimes detrimental to one's life. He criticized Confucius' ideals for being too obsessive, arguing that those noble actions, while admirable, could easily lead to individual internal conflict and social conflict. Zhuangzi said, beginning to use the four reaches, the title and wealth and to the endless. The benefit of things is not one's own. What he wanted to express is that the status and reputation one obtains mostly depend on external conditions, rather than one's own real will or ability. In other words, you may have worked hard for half your life, but you still fail or succeed because of luck, connections, or the circumstances of the times. How much real value is there in this kind of doing something? Zhuangzi was not against effort, but against the effort of controlling the result. He believed that we should follow our inner nature and should not force ourselves to accomplish goals that do not belong to us. Those who do something always think of changing others and the world, while those who do nothing try to settle themselves first, not to be disturbed by the outside world and not to be trapped by the world. This is an attitude of life that transcends utilitarian calculations. It is not to give up action, but to let action follow the rhythm of the heart and nature. In fact, Wu Wei is not a term exclusive to Taoism. Confucianism also talks about doing nothing. In his later years, Confucius also said, to govern with virtue is like the North Star, which is in its place and arched by all the stars. This means that the ideal governance does not rely on power but on the attraction of one's own character. However, Confucianism's doing nothing is the result of doing something to the extreme. You try to cultivate your body, correct your mind, be sincere, and align your family, and when you have achieved the ultimate, you can naturally influence others, so you don't have to deliberately pursue it. The Taoist, Wu Wei, especially Zhuangzi emphasized, is an essential non-intervention. Mr. Zhang Danian once summarized, Confucianism's Wu Wei is the extreme and reach, Taoism's Wu Wei is the pure Wu Wei. So it seems to be the same, but in fact it is very different. Confucianism's Wu Wei hides the moral efforts, and Zhuangzi's Wu Wei is to follow the natural course of nature, without making the true attitude. Zhuangzi's proposal of doing nothing does not encourage people to escape from society and do nothing. What he emphasized was not to go against nature, not to be driven by selfish desires, and not to force results. There is a famous analogy he wrote about a crooked-necked tree that lived the longest because it was so ugly that no one cut it down. Zhuangzi said, this tree seems to be useless, but because of useless and can save life, live freely. This seemingly useless existence, in fact, is the embodiment of a kind of wisdom. He also said, calmness and loneliness, nothingness and inaction, the peace of heaven and earth and morality. The virtue, in Zhuangzi's eyes, is not the moral code of Confucianism, but a way of behavior that conforms to nature and conserves one's nature. He advised people to downplay their desires, let go of their obsessions, and stop chasing after external fame, fortune, and comparisons. Because a lot of troubles and pains come from our strong desire for things that do not belong to us. Closely related to Wu Wei is another important idea of Zhuangzi and life. In ancient China, fate was a concept that mixed the laws of nature with the idea of predestination. Today we may say, fate is unknowable, but in the eyes of the ancients, fate was both the will of God and an objective law. According to Zhuangzi, in the face of fate, we should not fight against it, but learn to be content with it and follow nature. To rest in one's fate is not to passively accept failure, but to actively let go of attachment to the outcome. Recognizing that many things in life are not entirely determined by our subjective will. Zhuangzi said, "A man is born soft and weak, but he dies strong." From these simple words, we can read that the resilience of life's essence lies in its suppleness, not in its strength. In reality, many inexplicable events, the death of a loved one, sudden illness, injustice. Zhuangzi reminds us. Do not be trapped in the "why me" question, but slowly learn to accept. We must learn to accept it. To be at peace with one's life is not to compromise, but to find inner balance. It allows us to minimize conflict with the world and frees the mind from attachment. True freedom is not that you can change everything in the world, but that you can maintain clarity and peace in your heart in the face of the unchangeable. Zhuangzi's Wu Wei and life are not vain or negative, but a possibility for individuals to find a free settlement in the chaotic reality. He believed that the most important thing in life is not to conquer the world, but to find one's own freedom. To do nothing is not to make no effort, but not to be trapped by obsessions. To be at peace with one's life is not to resign oneself to one's fate, but to accept the uncertainties of life with a calm mind. In this era of faster and faster pace and more desires, Zhuangzi's thoughts may be able to give us a revelation through the millennium.